Hi, this is Ophoria, the digital reader, and this is the battery life challenge for the PocketBook Verse Pro Color. And whenever I do a battery life challenge, there's just a couple things I want to square away. The first is I try to read every day for at least an hour. I track the days it took me to finish the book. I track the actual hours that I read, and I track the battery percentage when I started the book and when I finished the book. And if I don't finish the book, then I'll still put how many pages I read before I reached 10% power. And I track the battery power from 100% to 10% because I feel like going to zero just doesn't make sense. I still kind of want to end it with a little bit of energy so you could read a little bit before you get home and charge. So I just want to start to show you what the lighting and color temperature was on the device before I got started reading. And also what I do to help extend the battery life of my e-readers is I change my PocketBook cloud setting so that the synchronization type is only syncing metadata and reading position instead of all. I found that when I did all, it sucked up a lot more juice. So it's just metadata and reading position. So the first book I read was When Death Comes Stealing by Valerie Wilson Wesley. That was 170 pages. It took me from 100% fully charged down to 86%. And I read 3.5 hours over 4 days. Then I read A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. That was 239 pages, and that took me from 84% to 61%. And then I read that for 5 days, 6.5 hours over 5 days. Then I read A Gilded Cage by Auburn Tempest and Michael Anderle. That was 274 pages, and that took me from 60% to 42%. And I read 5.75 hours over 6 days. And then I read A Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, and that was 592 pages, and that took me from 40% charge to 14%. And for that book, I read for 14.9 hours over 9 days. And then I read Viking's Dawn by Henry Treese. I was only able to get through 21 pages of that, and that took me from 14% to 10%. And I read a half hour over the course of 1 day. The total time that I read for 25 days, and the total hours was 31.5 hours, which is very good for a device. I generally feel like anything over 30 hours is excellent. And then taking a look at the devices I've done so far, I did the PocketBook InkPad 3 color. I got to 34 hours of battery life out of that one before it got to 10%. And now the PocketBook Verse Pro color, that's 31.5 hours of battery life before it got to 10%, which also is excellent. So this is my battery life challenge results for the PocketBook Verse Pro color, and I'll keep going. I think the next one is probably going to be the Books page, and I'll see what the battery life results are for that. This is Ofori, the digital reader, and keep reading.